to the Leaders of Influence podcast. Today we've got an amazing guest, Glyn Bailey. Now, Glyn is an accomplished, and I like this, inner negotiation strategist. Can't wait to unpack what that means. Commercial advisor and award-winning author based in the most beautiful region of planet Earth, the Sunshine Coast, Queensland. Operating at the intersection of commercial finance, psychology, we love our psychology, and executive leadership. Glyn serves as a strategic thinking partner for CEOs and executive teams. Glyn specialises in uncovering what she terms as inner negotiation, which is the private agreements, assumptions, and unspoken narratives. Stop it. And helping leaders align internal motivations with external strategies. Glyn eliminates operational friction to deliver clearer decisions, faster execution, and enhance commercial outcomes. Don't we all want those things? Her primary advisory practice operates through Simply Glyn Proprietary Limited, a uniform platform integrating her background in negotiation strategy, executive coaching, and leadership writing. Glyn backs her hand-on corporate track record with elite industry credentials and a dedicated commitment to professional writing. This is going to be interesting. Glyn is a graduate of the Australian Institute of Company Directors, holds advanced credit in EQ, I love it, and EQ 360, which is Certified Emotional Intelligence Practitioner qualifications, alongside a Cialdini accredited practitioner status in ethical influence.
Yeah, Cialdini.
Cialdini, sorry.
That's all good.
Cialdini. Actually, the Negotiation Playbook also was the award-winning book that Glyn wrote, alongside Unstoppable Women, Unstoppable and Healing After Heartbreak. Welcome, Glyn Bailey. What did I forget?
No, that was pretty comprehensive.
You happy with that?
Yeah, that's plenty.
Everyone says that. Massive shout out to Deb, as I do on every podcast, for finding our amazing introductions and amazing guests to love. So, Glyn Bailey, you are all over this topic. You are like the guru of influence. And talk
Well,
me through
negotiation is
negotiation.
very much about influence, isn't it? You
would-
can't you can't get the outcomes you want unless you influence them to
Right.
agree with what you're asking for.
That's right. To come over and give you what you want.
If you're in a competitive negotiation, perhaps more so. Collaborative, there's more dialogue.
Absolutely. And we both know that so Glyn, I often hear that negotiation, when you're negotiating a business deal, you should both feel like when you walk out that you've both lost, or then I hear people say you should both feel like you both won. I wonder what the psychology behind either of those ones are.
I think most people in negotiation, based on the data, would suggest they leave something on the table. And I'd say your negotiations should leave you feeling more dissatisfied in some way than satisfied in the pursuit of the outcome, for sure. And I think if you're satisfied, then perhaps what you've settled for is what is within your comfort zone rather than what pulled you out of your comfort zone to stretch.
Wow.
Yeah, I think certainly from a data perspective, we stop asking for more than we need once we're in the zone where we can say yes. And recognizing that value really needs to be explored before it could be created. And most people don't explore long enough because the discomfort of being in a negotiation to get an outcome and wanting to get it over and done with is often a driver for let's get this done and let's get an outcome that we're happy to settle for than necessarily the most optimized outcome for all parties.
Whoa. Beautiful way to start the podcast. So good. Thank you. Now, I love that. I just love the psychology of negotiation, because at the end of the day, you are trying to influence an outcome that you want for you, but at the end of the day, like you said, you've got to put something on the table and you've got to give a bit to get a bit most of the time.
Yeah. And if I think about, I joke about calling myself the inner negotiation strategist, and that's been a recent shift in focus from years of observing people in negotiations, being in negotiations, recognizing every external negotiation is won or lost based on the internal one first.
Right. Because you're negotiating with yourself first, not internal
Exactly
organisation.
right. Yeah, with
Right.
yourself. So you're
Interesting.
negotiating with yourself. You've potentially already determined what you won't ask for because that feels too cheeky or too much or too risky, and we lower what we initially ask for because we've negotiated with ourselves prior, and depending on the rules that we've got with ourselves and the agreements we've made will then determine the agreements we make elsewhere. So your business results are all based on a set of agreements that you've made with yourself internally before you make them externally.
Wow. Rules and agreements with self. Um, so let me ask you then, Glenn, what are why do we settle psychologically? Is it because of fear of asking? Is that a thing? Or is it the fear of rejection or the
I
fear
think
of judgment?
fear, full stop. The fear, it could be of how will I be perceived? It could be the fear of losing more than I gain. It
Hmm.
could be the fear of rejection. And again, that comes back to, does that say anything about my level of competence or my worthiness or my capability, in getting outcomes? So there's a whole load of reasons why someone may not ask. It could just be I didn't know I could ask, so a lack of uh, thinking beyond what the scope of the deal was to not explore beyond it. So I think fear, if I was just to put fear full stop,
Mm.
is what gets in our way, and most of that fear is an internal dialogue long before it's expressed
Mhm.
through our actions and our words externally.
And what they say FEAR is false expectations appearing real, like we make stuff up with our
Yeah,
imagination.
absolutely.
Well said. Glenn, great discussion already. Glenn, so for you, and I've asked this question many, many times, what does the word, the concept, influence, what does that mean to you, pretty please, especially from your scope and your sphere and your lens?
Yeah, for me, it's so broad, but it's about what's the impact that I want to have and how can I move people towards that impact. And I need to be the one that's causing that effect through the way I speak, through the way I share, through the way I storytell, through the way people feel. And so there's so many components of influence, but it's moving people towards an impact that you want to create, and it's much easier to move people towards that impact if they've got a shared interest in that same
Yeah.
outcome. And if there's a shared interest and there's mutual alignment and there's energy and commitment behind that vision, it becomes a lot easier to influence people. But recognizing influence is often challenged by the agendas different people have being at odds with each other.
Wow.
And so when you understand that agendas can be at odds with each other and you're seeking to understand someone's agenda before you're seeking to have your agenda understood, it becomes a lot easier to influence because you're speaking the language that someone's interested in rather than what you think you should be saying to convince them.
Beautifully put. And I think is it habit number 4 of the 7 habits of highly successful people: seek first to understand before seeking to
Before
be
seeking to be
understood.
understood. Yeah,
I love
100%.
it. Love
100%. And
it.
it's the same in negotiation because unless you understand what someone values, and all you're trying to do is you're exchanging value with each other, but you have to understand what someone values before you can exchange it.
Negotiation is exchanging values. And influence. starts with understanding values, from what I just heard you say, then
Mm.
understand what someone else values so that you can, and I guess there's a piece of negotiation in that so that you can align somehow your languaging to those values or your
Well, you
impact.
speak into what someone's already listening for. And I think that's the thing
Mm,
when you know what someone values, then the language you use, the choices you make about the stories you share speaks into what someone's already listening for because their filter, their reticular activating system is all ready to receive that because it's part of what they're wired to be interested in. But if you
and it goes
don't
in.
speak to what they're interested in, then they may not have a filter to be able to receive what you're saying.
Love it. Because it's so much easier to get through the filter. I love it if it aligns.
Yeah.
Wow, beautifully put. For all of our listeners and viewers, what a great little psychology lesson from Glyn Bailey. And just amazing how someone like Glyn can really articulate some of these. They're quite heavy psych concepts, but in a way that we can all sort of lean into and understand, and then take it away. This is like framework for communication. You know, learn what people value, speak into that. I love those words.
Mm.
And beautifully put. Beautifully put. Um, can I ask, with all of these years' experience, was there a leader that you can think of professionally that might have influenced your journey along the way, Glyn? And if so, why? Pretty please.
Um, from my corporate career, I would say there's been several leaders that have been positive, but there's also been a couple of standouts that have not been so positive in experience. And I would say whether it's a default bias of our human psychology is I feel like I've learned more about who I don't want to be from the experiences that I've had from leaders that I've worked for myself, where it's tell, not show, where it's micromanage versus autonomy, whether it's a lack of curiosity. So I look at that and think the biggest thing that I feel personally I've had to work on since leaving corporate is determining who I actually was outside a system that told me who I should be. And I think the leaders that I've worked with well have been the ones that encourage and influence through allowing people's nature to be revealed, to be shown, to have their team step into their own light rather than trying to cast a shadow.
Wow, Glenn, you're so beautifully articulate with this stuff. That was gold. To determine who I am outside a system telling me who to be. Whoa. Um, so I can't. We cannot move on until if I could ask you this question. So, what did you find out when you determined who you are? Who are you outside that system? Who are you as now a negotiation expert, for example?
Well, I think this is the thing. The person that I am now is someone who is a deep investigator, researcher of philosophy, psychology, different negotiation concepts. I'm curious about human beings and how we live and how we work and how we realize our purpose and our potential. But I'm also an experimenter. I learn from putting that research into practice in my own life to then establish what actually works or doesn't work. So I'm on this balance between understanding theory, but recognizing theory means nothing unless it's embodied and put into practice. And you can't discover who you are unless you're willing to put on different outfits to try them on for size and go, is this me? Is this not me? And I think in environments like big organizations where you've got a particular model of leadership or a particular model of influence that you might be observing, that might suit that person's style or approach or way of being. but it might not be your way of naturally communicating or influencing or leading. So trying something on for size to determine who am I, how do I naturally communicate, how do I get people to move towards the impact that I want to make and the meaningful contribution that I want to deliver in my role, in my environment. And if I can try on those in a safe environment with leaders that give you the chance to experiment, then that works. So I think it took me leaving corporate, sadly, for myself personally, but that's not because that growth couldn't have happened, but it was just the point in time that I was in and the role that I was in. I was ready for something outside of the system, so to speak. But within corporate structures and big teams, I would be looking for the leaders that already align to the values that you see and asking them for space or for guidance on how you can experiment about who you are.
Wow. Well said, well articulated. Looking for aligned leaders who you can emulate, who you
Yeah,
are inspired by to be more like them
yeah,
because of what
yeah,
they show, not tell.
yeah.
And by the way, I'm going to take you back to where you really started that, because I think you have just articulated in a way that I don't think anyone has yet in my mind, especially in these conversations. What does crappy leadership looks like? It looks like tell, not show, micromanagement, and a lack of curiosity. What powerful! That is such a powerful statement, and like a lot of people, if I said who is your worst leader, they'll be able to tell me, but they won't be able to tell me their character traits. They'll only generally be able to tell me what they said, Glenn. This person said
Mm,
this, said that, and that's the tell piece. And
yeah,
you picked that up beautifully. And people remember that for decades, And how do I know? Because they tell me.
yeah. Like my best feelings with leaders were when they asked me my thoughts, the curiosity. What do you think? What do you see that I don't see? What would you do differently than I'm choosing right now? Or what are the implications of this choice that we're making? And whether that was junior in my 20s as a junior manager before I became a leader of people at the time, or once it was leading a team or after, those conversations are the ones that for me stood the test of leadership for me, because it invited me to the table, even if I didn't have a
The answer.
legitimate hierarchical seat at that point in time.
Mm. And there would have been times maybe when, yeah, that's right. So you didn't have the seat, so you didn't have the formal. But
Yeah,
there might have been times when a leader said, "What have I missed?" And you mightn't have had an answer. You might say, "No, no, no, that's cool. Thanks for asking, though." But you still appreciate being invited into the conversation.
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
absolutely. When you know they're genuinely interested, not because they're trying to
Mm.
catch you out or test you.
Oh, of course, of course. I think the intent. Let's
Exactly right. The intent's got
say.
to be clean.
Did you say clean?
Clean.
Clean. Clean.
Yeah.
I've never heard that before. Glenn,
Yeah.
you
The
are saying
intent's got to be
stuff.
clean.
Clean intent. So when we say clean, it's like nappy sand clean. Is that what you mean by like?
Clean in the sense that there's no personal or hidden agenda.
Oh,
It's
hidden
for
agenda.
the greater good of the
Oh,
organization and the outcome that's going to serve
mm,
everyone involved, the most optimized outcome.
optimized. Oh, an optimized outcome. I love that.
Because it's not always going to be perfect, but it might be, the best that's available for that context.
In the moment.
Yeah.
Glenn, I think you mentioned something then as part of all of that where you said sometimes you'll get asked and you don't have the authority, you don't have the position, you don't have the title. Let's say, for example, for someone out there who doesn't have the title, maybe they don't get asked, maybe they don't get invited in, but they still want to have a say. And let's presume that their leader's intent is clean. how would you, I guess, coach someone to influence an outcome when they don't have direct control? Do you know what I mean? Like they're not the boss or they're not the title holder.
Yeah, I think most of my career early on was in that context. My career background was in commercial finance, and finance by nature has been a supporting function to a revenue generating function like sales,
Hmm.
or a cost saving function in some way, procurement, but albeit procurement often report into finance. But there's this sense of finance are the enablers, but they're not the front line. And so when it comes to big commercial deals, where do you have direct influence over the deal that's being done or signed off? Perhaps not, because there's sales team, there's the CEO, there's the execs that are involved. And as a certainly in my early career, in my finance career, I didn't have authority to tell people no, that deal shouldn't be signed, or here's the conditions that you can. I could give them the criteria, but I didn't have the yay or nay at the end. And what I learned early on, it was the best place to be practicing influence, because you don't know when you have the legitimate hierarchy whether someone's doing something because you've got the stripes on the shoulder, so to speak, to pull rank and tell people or instruct people, and therefore they do it because you're their leader and they have a reporting line into you. Whereas when you don't have people reporting into you and there's no reporting line, the only measure of your impact is the level of influence you can have. And so it's a great way to test it. And so what I would often do was, one, invite myself to network with as many of the team that I worked with casually. So whether it be, in the kitchen canteen, or whether it be going out for lunch, or whether it be social events, so that I could build those relationships. So people like to hear the opinion of people they like, and they're
No,
more
like, and trust.
yeah, absolutely, and they're more open to that. They invite you in more when they know you as a person rather than when they don't. So taking that time to build those relationships, I think, is key. But also, if you're not an outspoken person, or maybe you're more introverted in nature and therefore don't feel as comfortable leaning into the social side of things, it's as simple as asking the question, are you open to hearing an alternate perspective? Are you open to hearing what I'm seeing? Um, is there an opening here for me to share what I'm observing? And just asking that question, it's unlikely. I don't think I've ever heard someone turn around and say, no, I'm not open.
That's a good thing. Yep, good.
Yeah. So when you're asking, are you open, you're asking a identity level question. And the desired identity that people want is to be seen as someone that is open and receptive to hearing and listening. So recognizing when you open questions with identity level questions that people want to be, it's much easier to get them to have the desired response that you want than leaning in and saying, I've got something that counters that view.
Whoa, Glenn, again. I hope I hope our listeners and viewers understand how sort of deep the conversation is. I know that they're just words, but at the end of the day, this is really, really powerful stuff if you can lean in. I always say, Glenn, that we should be asking permission-based questions a lot of the time. And what you're asking permission-based questions, but at the same time, you're asking them to someone's identity because the answer says something about them.
Who they
It's
are.
who they are.
Yeah.
Powerful.
Yeah.
So,
And it's priming, right? So from a negotiation perspective, I'm priming people based on how I want them to respond. You strike me as someone who will have considered all of the alternate possibilities before making a decision. Would you mind me adding a perspective that I haven't yet shared? right? And again, oh, you've strike me as someone who considers all the possibilities. I've created the identity that I want you to step into. And denying that identity actually makes you diminish your leadership rather than expand your leadership. So I'm very deliberate about what questions I'm asking that create the identity of the person I need you to be, so I can make the contribution I need to make.
I need the transcript of this. So you're creating the identity of the. Just say that again for me, Glenn. For all our.
Creating the identity of the person I need you to be, so I can create the outcome that I need to and the contribution that I need to make.
Wow, outcome I need. Wow, thank you. That's so well put and powerful. I'm questioning is such a you know important part of obviously negotiation. Lining our values, where are they coming from? You can't be curious without asking questions.
I think with that, being present, because you
Present.
can't ask the best questions if you're in your head trying to think about the best questions to ask.
Glenn, powerful. So one of the things one phrase that I've coined over the years is have go-tos. So what I mean by that is they should just roll off your tongue. They should just come naturally in certain
Yeah.
circumstances. And is that what you're saying then when you don't want to have to think about it? You want them just to come out,
There's
slide out?
absolutely there's two parts of that. So there's absolutely have your go-to questions so that you're prepared, because preparation gives you the chance to be more present in the room. And in any negotiation, I'd ask that everyone's prepared because you can be more present. What I'd also say is because you're prepared, you are in the room. And because you're prepared, you're listening with greater levels of intent, because your body is fully there listening to the conversations rather than you being up in your head disappearing away somewhere. But because you've prepared, that level of relaxation that you're feeling means you might not even go to your go-to questions. You hear or see something that you're now ready to receive, and you're connecting dots from a place of being present rather than being in your head. And you ask the natural question that the environment needs you to ask because you've been observant and in your listening and in your seeing.
And that's a level above go-tos because it's natural and it's just flows.
But you need the go-tos as a starting point, because without your go-tos, you're not prepared. And if you're not prepared, you're going to go in still being in your head thinking about questions. So having your go-tos prepared gives you the opportunity to come in and be open to stepping into that next level of what am I seeing? What am I observing?
And then it's the natural next question. I love that word. What's the natural next question? There's a book in that. That's dead set is a book title or a TED Talk title. What is the
There you go.
natural
You
next
can have
question?
that.
Oh, thank you. I'll give you credit. We'll do it together. What is the
The
natural?
the natural next question is linked to what someone's just shared. So when we're thinking about probing, for example, I often in a negotiation training environment, I'll say, let's start with practicing your probing and your questioning, like a funnel. You start off with an open question, and a very common question is, how's business? Or how are you? I'm good, thanks. Or business is good. And the natural next question, often when we're not aware that there is a natural next question, is we're thinking, okay, that didn't give me very much information. Now I need to go to my go-to list of what's the next question I need to ask. And and that's fine. And that's absolutely a way to alleviate any awkwardness or discomfort. But if I wanted to just trust myself that I could, I've got this suite of tools I can go back to, but what's the natural next question? My natural next question would be, what's good about it? Or why do you feel so good? What's been good about your week? So they've used the word good, like business is good, thanks. Great. What's good about it? And it's the natural next question probing, and it's the one that most people don't expect you to ask because
Mm,
they've dismissed your first question as if it was a surface level,
mm,
connection, rapport building question, not one that you're
mm.
actually genuinely interested in understanding. But when you pause, you ask the natural next question from a place of interest, clean intent, curiosity. You make someone else pause and go, oh, right. Actually, I've got to think about the response that I now give you,
Wow,
and give you some opportunity to then actually be in dialogue.
I love that. Beautifully articulated. Um, and how often do we just dismiss that first question without thinking about it? And we, how's the weather? How's business? How's
Human
life?
behavior, it's natural.
Yeah.
We're busy. We're
Mm,
orienting ourselves often from one meeting to the next meeting.
mm,
We have these questions, and we haven't yet landed ourselves, our bodies in the room. We're still in our minds processing the last meeting that I've still got to, capture notes on or do something about.
mm.
So when we give ourselves permission to land, and by asking that next question, you give the other person the opportunity to land in the conversation too.
Such great analogies. Are you a pilot by any chance, or do you do a lot of flying?
No, I wish I was. That'd be amazing. I've always wanted to
I've got
fly.
a, I've got a son who is. He's a commercial pilot,
Oh,
and
incredible.
and you'd know that, or tell me, or actually, what was the psychology behind what I just asked? And it's not a
Oh,
trick question, but
no, oh gosh, just the storytelling and the connections with the visual and the words. So I'm bringing a whole picture together.
correct. You can visualize, like I can visualize either a plane landing or me
Yeah,
landing, and I think I just love that. And when you use analogies, I'm always listening for that analogy, Glenn, whether it's the right thing or not to do. And I'd love your
yeah,
take on this because you can tell a lot about a person, like, whether they've got a military background, whether their pilots are landing, whether they're a sports person, they'll talk about the morale, the camaraderie, the dressing room, and I just love it when you talk beautifully in analogies, just so
it
naturally.
just
That
helps people connect, I think, and yeah, use all of their faculties to make sense of the world.
subtleties to make sense of the world. Our viewers and listeners are going to love this podcast. Subtleties to make sense. Now, next one, and the next natural question is not about subtleties, but it's about, let's say, for example, Glenn, and you would have had this in your finance career and your corporate career as you grew through your journey. I would presume that people resisted some of the changes that you wanted to make as a leader, and they probably still do now as a coach and as a guide that
Mhm.
you are and a trainer. How do you influence someone that doesn't want to change? And we've probably talked a little bit about that, but is there anything specific? Or here's a better question. Here's a better
I
natural question. Change,
No, I can
change
answer
process.
it, but I'll let you if you want to
Uh,
add a bolt on. Yeah.
Just change process. Mm,
Okay. What I've learned, and I wouldn't have had this wisdom in my 20s, but what I've learned now that I'm in my 40s is the best way to influence change is to be the change.
Oh,
You got to be the person that you want others to be. So if you want someone else to change. If you change yourself, they change because now the way you're looking at things is different.
be the
Right.
change.
So if you're wanting to get a particular outcome and someone's being belligerent or difficult or not communicating in a way that you would want them to be demonstrating curiosity or interest in that outcome, the first thing I have to do is I have to change my perspective and perception of what I think that person's capability or interest is. Like, I can stop myself from judgment. They're an idiot, they don't get it. They've just got their own agenda. They're not interested in what's good for the company or good for the people. So, I've got a whole load of story and narrative that I'm attaching to who I think this person is being. So the first thing I have to do is to drop the attachment to my own stories. If I can drop the attachment to my own stories, what I allow myself to open up is to be more curious and then consider, well, what else is going on for them? If I can trust that this person, based on the way they're seeing the world, that the choices that they're making and the decisions that they have available to, to commit to or not, are made with a level of logic and rationale based on what they're seeing and understanding about the world around them, in what world would the decision they're making make sense? Because they're not, we've got to give kudos to believe that most people aren't irrational decision makers, that for the most part people are considered in their thinking. But what we don't know is what their perception filter is. What are they seeing? What are they open to? What are they allowing in to allow them to make sense of the choices they make? And if I then go, okay, I can understand, genuinely understand why someone would make that choice, then it makes me more empathetic, it makes me more compassionate, it makes me more aware that there's different ways to reach particular outcomes, and maybe we actually aren't aligned on the bigger outcome. Maybe actually they're going in a different direction. So it changes my questions. It then gets me thinking, rather than trying to convince someone, I get curious about, so where are you heading? Like, are we actually, both heading in that same direction, or are you going here and I'm going here, and now I'm trying to convince you to go somewhere you don't want to go? And if I understand where you're going, and actually if we're going to the same direction and we want the same destination, then I can say, can I offer an alternate view of why I think we can go this way? And actually you might get what you want faster, or you might go further in a shorter amount of time. Would you be open to exploring that? And I'm completely unattached if you say no, but are you okay to give me 5 minutes to just share an alternate perspective that may or may not shift your viewpoint? Now I'm coming from a place of genuine listening. I've got clean intent. If I'm genuinely going, I'm not attached, because whatever I get back will give me further information about a perception filter that I perhaps haven't even considered myself, that I might have a block, or there might be something that I'm not seeing. And as I said, I would never have had that wisdom in my 20s. In my 20s, I was probably more the belligerent one. It's like, you're an idiot, why don't you get it? Come on. I'm right, you're wrong. That kind of level of maturity. So I don't profess to have been like, a young genius. This is what I come back to. It's the hard won research over years of experimentation and realizing what works and what doesn't work, and what causes the least amount of suffering. The least amount of suffering is when I can change myself and my mind rather than trying to change someone else's.
Least amount of suffering. Whoa. And that's suffering is a big word. See, there's another analogy. That's a powerful word, and you use powerful words for a reason to have an impact. And
because we don't think we cause ourselves suffering, but oh my God, how much ruminating do we do over someone who's rejecting, your ideas or your proposals? And I'm like, like that's suffering. I'm literally torturing myself through the stories and the narrative that I'm constantly got on repeat. So the sooner I can, let go and detach from my own, attached ideas of what I think the solution should be, I don't suffer in the same way. I don't get agitated. My emotions aren't hijacked. I'm easier to be around. I'm more able to stay calm and see what an alternate pathway could be if it's meaningful and important. Or I might learn something about a new destination that's actually better than the one that I was trying to get people to go to.
Wow. I might learn something. Whoa. How powerful. What just a little mic drop moment then.
Yeah.
Again, it's like, hold on a sec. I'm trying to influence change as a leader. I'm going to go and ask for permission to investigate what it is how I can reduce their suffering and help that person get there. And at the end of the day, guess what? I'm going to learn something.
So there's no lose when you allow yourself to look at the world differently, be the change.
Model the behavior you want to see.
Yeah. Show, not tell,
Model,
right? It's back to the
show,
leadership
not
piece,
tell.
like show, not tell.
Love it. Show, not tell. So cool. So in saying that, like you do this stuff so beautifully, Glenn, and yes, there's probably decades of training, and yes, you've worked hard to build these skills. So, and I always say that, I did a session the other day, and we had a great leader in the room, and this great influencer leader, and I said to people, is that natural or is that nurtured? Do you know what everyone said, Glenn? Natural.
Oh, really?
And I said to the person, Chris was the person's name, and I'll give him a shout out. Chris Tucker, a beautiful guy and a beautiful human and a great leader. And I said, Chris, is this natural or nurtured? He said, mate, nurtured. Podcast, books, trial and error, tough times, knock down, start again. But see, people look at you and go, hold on a second, this is so easy for Glenn. But it's not, and I think I'd just call that out to people. You too can be like Glenn. Glenn's quite inspirational, and it's a learnt skill.
Yeah. You should have seen me in my 20s.
I'm
And you,
with
you
you.
might want to speak to the people that worked for me in my 20s. And I'm pretty sure some of them will have not so great things to say about my leadership style, right? So
Okay.
let's not pretend everything was always this way and that I haven't hurt people along my journey of growth, through my own, experience. So I've been, hurt by other leaders' behaviors, and I have no doubt that in my 20s I caused hurt to others as well. So you have to learn from those. You can't judge yourself for the mistakes, but just go, okay, well, how do I get to be a better person? How do I do better this next moment rather than the moment that's just passed? Start again tomorrow and keep building that muscle so that you can.
Love it, Glenn. And Glenn, for our final natural next question, if there was someone out there, so, and I want to ask this in a personal way, but I don't, because I want to say, well, what did you do? When was the moment that you decided you needed to change? But what I'd rather say is, could you coach our listeners and our viewers, if there's someone out there that doesn't feel like they're as influential as they could be now, what would you coach them, Glenn, to do? Is it go and read a book? Is it go and, how do you build your influence skills?
I think it has to start with the inner conversation you're having with yourself. So back to that inner negotiation, right? So the conversation you're having with yourself in that right there is saying, I can't influence, and therefore I'm never going to be any good at this. I see other people who do it better than me. I don't have these skills, or I'm not naturally this way, or I'm shy, or I'm quiet, or I don't have the same experience. There must be something wrong with me. I missed something when I was born that someone else was born with. And I say these because these are probably all the dialogues that I've had over the years in various different shapes or forms. But I would say the first thing is to notice what's the conversation going on in your head. Because the conversation you allow to go on, and the more you keep making agreements with those stories and those conversations in yourself first. If I've agreed that's true, then I've created an identity that then creates the outcome to match. So I actually want to go, that's a BS story, and I know it's a BS story, and I'll tell you why it's a BS story is because it makes me feel worse than I do. So when a story that's on repeat in your head makes you feel bad, you know it's BS. So what's the better story you can tell yourself that makes you feel good? Focus on the good feeling stories and take them to be the truth. So is it true that I have never influenced anyone to do anything ever? No. So okay, so it must have been a BS story then. So if I believe the truth that yes, I have influenced in the past and other people have done stuff that I have influenced, and it might be getting your friend to buy a new outfit because it was their birthday and they were thinking, oh no, I don't need a new outfit. And you're like, no, go on, treat yourself. It's your birthday, you deserve it. And they've gone, oh, you know what? Yes, I will. That's influence. You caused an effect, So I look at that and go, it could be something really, really teeny and tiny. But when you see that you actually have influenced in the past and you find the evidence for it, your focus then has to be, how do I create more evidence? So who can I observe right now doing it well? And maybe I just go and ask them a question for one tip on what they did, and then I'll follow that for a wee while. But I'd say that the nicest thing you can do to yourself is to not be the person that is diminishing of who you can become before you've even had a chance. Like I said, every external negotiation is won or lost based on the internal one you have first. And if you're trying to influence someone to take action and you've already denied yourself that internally, it won't happen.
Wow. Let me go and switch cameras, do a summary, Glyn, and I'm going to come back to you, Glyn, for the motivational finish, for the crescendo of our
No worries.
our podcast conversation. Listeners and viewers, if you haven't got gold out of today, you haven't been listening. That is one of the most powerful conversations I've had, just because of the frameworks, the strategies, the tools, the tips that Glyn was able to beautifully articulate today. That was some amazing work. And let me talk you through it very quickly. And I think, again, it probably hasn't. It's been a lot of work for Glyn to build all these skills, as Glyn said, and I get that. I know the feeling. Glyn started with talking about negotiations and how dissatisfied or satisfied we feel, and and I think I get that we stop ourselves asking in negotiations. And when I ask Glyn why fear of something, the fear of whatever it happens to be, and I won't list off what Glyn said. I just know that because I think we've all experienced it. Danger's real. Don't walk into a scary part of town, but fear generally is imagined because it's called worry, and it's generally not going to happen, and it's never going to be as bad as we think it is. And so I always say the answer to every question is no till you ask it. Just ask the question. And this happened yesterday, hot off the press. Quick story. I was at this big networking event, huge names up on stage, owned hundreds of millions of dollars worth of companies. And there was two people there that wanted to get a photo with one of the guest speakers. I said, no worries, I'll make that happen. So I said to the guest speaker, hey, would you mind if we got a photo with these two people over here? And he looked at me as if like to say, who are you to ask that question? These other two people said, did you just ask that? I said, why not? And guess what? They got the photo they wanted. And that's really not influence, it's asking a question. And why did I tell you that story? Because Glyn talked so much during this podcast, and Glyn gave you some of the best questions you can ask. And even right down to Glyn gave you names for question sets, like an identity shaping question or an identity question. And I think, and not only that, Glyn talked about questions that help someone build the identity that you need them to step into before you have a negotiation with them. Like powerful, powerful leadership conversation today. And then questions that great leaders ask. What have I missed? What can you add to this? But also ask your leader, hey, do you mind if I share something? Do you mind if are you open to a conversation around another alternative? Like, mic drop moments the whole way through this conversation. And and I love Glyn's pipeline of funnel. I love the question funnel. I'm going to use that in future. Thank you, Glyn. We asked really sort of poor questions, I'm going to say, at the top of the funnel, like nothing questions. And when people say to you, geez, that's a good question, you're making me think, you'll know that you've asked the right question because it challenges thinking. Anytime someone's got to think about their answer, you know that you've asked the right question. We talked about go-tos, but we talked about, and I love how Glyn said, the more prep you do, the less you need your go-tos, but you might want to start there. And the only way to get your go-tos is do your prep. But at the end of the day, and I want to leave you with this, this is my mic drop moment. And I kid you not, there is something in this. What's the natural next question? I love that. And so I'm going to credit Glyn with that every time I use it moving forward. We're going to hand back to Glyn to give us something powerful, something motivational, something that we're going to remember. Glyn Bailey, all the way from the Sunshine Coast, Queensland. Finish yourself pretty, please.
The most important negotiation you have is the one that you have with yourself.
Done. You've been listening to the Leaders of Influence podcast. You got Anton Guinea, and that was Glyn Bailey. And we are lucky enough to have some of the best conversations around probably one of the most important topics on the planet. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you check out our other podcast conversations and never miss one of these amazing conversations.